let's go over joint by joint what we think. Let's go a little bit into the mobility and flexibility thing. I have a cool diagram I'll show you, but I want to first go through it. So ankle, do we want mobility or stability? I know, yeah, it's the opposite. That's why this subject always confuses me. The ankle, you want more mobility. And why does that make sense now? Because of everything we just went over, now that I'm thinking about it, it even makes more sense to me. If I don't have mobility in my ankle, it's gonna affect my whole chain. So it's the first chain of the body, and you'll look at this from top to bottom once you see it, and it will make sense in your head. But knee, do I want more stability or mobility? Exactly, right? Hip, do I want mobility or stability? Exactly. Thoracic spine. Well, let's go lumbar spine. Lumbar spine. Does the lumbar spine rotate well? Huh? Stability. Does this lumbar spine rotate? No, exactly. So that's a way to remember it, is since it doesn't have great access to range of motion, it's probably a stable joint, right? But my thoracic is a different subject. Do I want mobility or stability with my thoracic? Right? My wrist, do I want mobility or stability? We just talked about it, so. Mobility, exactly. My elbow. Stability. Shoulder. Look at us. Cervical. Mobility. I don't necessarily understand that one, but. Yeah, true. I mean, there's nothing. So the way the diagram, I'll show you the diagram. So the way the diagram makes sense to me is because, like, top to bottom is mobility, and then it's stability, then mobility, and then stability. So I think top and bottom are your ends of your chain. Those are the mobile joints, because there's nothing to stabilize around them.
Roger was telling us it's basically every other one.
Exactly, it's almost every other one, yeah. But that's a great way to start what we're going to talk about. So let's go down here. That's not what I want. Maybe I passed it already. Okay, yeah.
So when you guys sleep, your feet, toes go up or do they go down? Just
Like that. Because my covers are too tight. They have to go down.
No, I mean, because I have tight ankles, but they're automatically, this is where I'm comfortable. So this is how I sleep.
Yeah,
And I'm
I sleep like that.
Some people sleep like this.
I really have no.
I think I sleep in dorsiflexion because I sleep on my side. So I think I curl up, but when I initially go to sleep and I'm like, okay, you're gonna sleep on your back tonight, my covers are so tight that I always feel that. It's pushing me into that plantar flexion. That's interesting.
Tight covers too, because I used to
Yeah.
have like 5 blankets at the end
Yeah.
of my feet because it's freezing and you never know.
Yeah. You don't know how you sleep?
I just fall asleep. I sleep however.
That's a man thing. Women don't fall asleep. Women think about 3,000 things, then they fall asleep.
I'm out.
Okay, so what do you think, what does flexibility refer to? Like, what are we talking about in the body when we talk about flexibility? Of your what?
Your muscles.
Of your muscles, right? Your actual connective tissue. So muscles, ligaments, tendons, ability to temporarily elongate, right? So this gets very confusing, and if you ask me if I understand it 100%, even though I've read this 35 times, I don't, because it's just one of those, there's a lot of gray area in flexibility and mobility, right? But I'll try to give as much information to help us be able to understand. Flexibility is passive, right? It's a person's ability to move their connective tissue with the help of another person or tool, while their muscle passively allows the movement to happen. Mobility, right, is more about tension and stability of the joint. So mobility is our ability to take our body through a range of motion before being restricted with the control of that joint or the lack of stability in that joint. So it's like, the best way to understand it is mobility is your ability to have strength within your flexibility. And I have a good example for that because I'll say it again, right? Mobility is your ability to have strength within your flexibility. So let's say I can squat ass to grass body weight. right? You would think I have great flexibility, right? Or even I have great mobility from watching me. But then let's say you put a 200-pound bar in my back. Am I able to access that mobility now? Am I able to access that flexibility if I don't have the mobility in my joints? No, exactly. So that's the difference. I have lots of other examples, so don't feel overwhelmed yet. Because it is. I've even gone to conferences before when we talk about this. Even the person presenting is like, honestly, like I'm not 100% clear on it yet. Like it's just one of those subjects that's like so much gray area. The biggest difference between mobility and flexibility is that in order to move a muscle through a range of motion with control, mobility, right? That control is mobility. You must have flexibility within it. So flexibility, right? What's an example of flexibility? Being able to bend over and touch your toes, right? So you might have someone that doesn't have the mobility to do something else that requires, like if you watch someone touch their toes with straight legs, you're like, oh, this person's gonna have a great squat, like, but they might not really. Because if they don't have the joint mobility, it's gonna look different than just a passive movement, like letting them hang, like passive hang ragdoll, right? So bending over, touching your toes is an example of flexibility, right? Ability of the muscle or group to lengthen passively through a range of motion. And then this is an interesting like analogy, is mobility is the walkie-talkie example. Okay, so let's say me and Kyria are on a walkie-talkies right here, right? And we hear each other perfectly. The further I move away, what's happening? I'm demanding more on that signal, right? And that signal in this example is our CNS. Right, so the further I move away from Kyria, the more my central nervous system has to work to access that connection or to build that connection, okay? Over and over again, if I do it, I can increase that, I can strengthen that connection. But in the beginning, I'm gonna have to stay at this level so that she can hear me, my CNS can hear me over and over again asking what I'm asking of it. Over time, I can slowly demand more on the CNS, more and more. That's mobility, right? Very different than flexibility. I'm actually, if I end up being able to build enough mobility with that walkie-talkie analogy and I'm over on the other side of the gym, I have that forever, or as long as I'm working on it. I'm paying attention to it. Versus like flexibility, that's very different. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
Awesome. I'll take a little bit. Okay, so ankle flexibility, right? So flexibility, ankle mobility. What do you think an example of ankle flexibility is?
It's just how far you push.
What?
Push that.
Right? My knee over my toe. So like the test we do in our assessment, right, is this test. Hey, I want you 5 inches away from the wall, right, with your toe. I need your heel to stay on the floor. I want you to try not to cave your arch, because that's also cheating. If someone caves their arch, they're kind of like fighting for it so hard that they're losing their connection. So I'm gonna be here. I want you to try to push your knee, right? That's flexibility of my ankle, right? Versus, what is this? Mobility of my ankle. A drill we use a lot, which you'll see it in programming, is ankle, lunges with knee over toe. That would be a mobility drill. Or like the drill I showed you here, right? This is a mobility drill because I'm loading it, asking it to go past what it's comfortable, because I'm now loaded, which I wasn't loaded in the flexibility drill. Knee flexibility. Knee is definitely the largest and most vulnerable joint in the lower body. Stability is essential of the knee. It's hard to isolate the knee joint. Can you think of any ideas that you would how could you mobilize the knee joint? Sorry, how would you create flexibility in the knee joint? I can only think of one example, it's written down, but. Child's pose is the only thing I can think of. Like, a lot of times people have a hard time sitting like this, but I'm unloaded, right? I can just get them to push back. That would be flexibility of the knee joint. Hips, 90-90s, box to lift, right? We've regression, progression. So 90-90 boxes, we now know those, right? That's just here. We can progress it to a mobility demand where I'm loading and squeezing my muscles. So spine, we went over, right? Lower body is, lower spine is stability, where thoracic is, you want more mobility in it. So how would we create mobility in the thoracic? Yeah, right, loading it, and exactly. Does that make sense, what she's saying? Okay, so then flexibility would be like cat-cow, right? Or like thread the needle. That's more flexibility, but for me to get mobility, I'd have to actually load it, which I think this is what you're saying, Kyria. Like lat pull-throughs, things like that. We do that where you're reaching, allowing it to pull you, and then pulling back. Oh, my oblique just cramped. Your shoulder, I think, would be the most highly demanded mobility joint of the body, like where you want the most mobility. Tight lats and pecs are how you're going to mobilize, how you're going to create flexibility in the shoulder. There's not like, you're not going to create flexibility within the shoulder joint itself. You're going to create mobility around it, which would be your lats, your pecs, your delts. Let's see. Swimmers. Did Roger go over swimmers with you? Prone swimmers? I'm sure you've seen people doing it now. It's a great way to like mobility of the shoulder joint. Right, or alternating swimmers. Or T's, A's, W's, Y's. Those, yeah? Okay. Let's see, banded external internal rotation. You understand that one? Shoulder, yes, no? Shoulder down and back, no? Shoulder down and back. So I'm most likely, it will always be programmed through a scrunchie. They literally say like scrunchie yellow, scrunchie blue. There's different ways to get it set up, but I think the easiest way is loop. Okay, I'm gonna have you hold the non-working side. I just want you to adjust the external arm to what feels like a medium amount of tension. Shoulders set down and back, right? Elbows pinned to the side. I'm gonna keep my wrist stiff as I pull out. Nice and slow, I want them to feel that. All in here, working on mobilizing the shoulder joint. Mobilize the shoulder joint. Internal, right? Now I'm gonna switch it, so now it's this arm. I want tension. Once again, elbow, shoulder stays back. What people wanna do is they wanna go like this, right? So you're gonna keep them set. What Taylor does is she'll put like a towel under their elbow. So they're forced to hold it to keep that connection alive. What are two shoulder stretches I can do for flexibility of the shoulder itself?
Static stretches?
Yeah. Like a good filler again, like if we're dealing with like, hey, I have this time and I know this person's tight here, what can I give them? What about?
And you want to
Yeah, like just so you're,
even like a pat down.
exactly, pat down stretch, right? So hands on wall, soft knee, right? Pushing head down to the floor.
Do like the 90-degree stretch too.
You can do that. You can do shoulder circles. You'll see in programming, like wall shoulder circles or this, right? I'm trying to keep my chest forward, washing that wall. So obviously the closer I move, the more demand. So if you're dealing with someone's tight, they're probably not gonna be that close. Lats, I always like to open up people's lats before they front squat. Great way to do that is bench, right? Just really opening up their lats, just to help with the shoulders, mobility-wise. Elbows are a connection point, right? It's very hard to work the elbow by itself. Like when you work the wrist, you're stabilizing the elbow. When you work the shoulder, you're stabilizing the elbow. It's very hard to give that person something just for their elbow. I mean, these are, I guess, a good example. Like this is pretty isolated on wrist and elbow. They're always under pressure, right? We went over wrist circles, loaded flexion, loaded extension. Okay, so this is the thing I already said, but I'm gonna say it one more time to see if it makes more sense now. Someone with great mobility may be able to squat below parallel with 200 pounds in their back with no restrictions of range of motion, right? A flexible person may be able to break parallel with a bodyweight squat, but once you load them with 100 pounds or even 200 pounds, they may not have the strength, core strength, balance, coordination to perform the same motion, right? But someone with poor mobility may be able to complete a partial rep with 1 to 200 pounds in their back, but doesn't have the range of motion necessarily to break parallel. What would you think, what's the starting mobility you would want someone to be at? That's something to know in your head, like, hey, I'm gonna have this person do like, I guess what you need to what you need to be able to see in someone is, what are my limitations of a shoulder press? Like, how shitty does it have to be for me to be like, we're not doing this anymore, right? That's hard sometimes, because you'll get some people that are like almost there, like, actually John's a perfect example. You can see him getting better at it, but if you were like a stickler for it, like 100%, then he would fail. So it's kind of within your own head, where is that comfort point of, hey, this is good for you, I still think you're getting what you need out of it, versus like, this is actually probably damaging you because you have such lack of mobility, this exercise is not helping you. So for overhead stuff, like if someone is within their face and they're not having pain, I'll usually let it go, but I'll keep the weight really light. Right, but if someone's like here and that's all they can get and they're in pain and they can't even hold a dumbbell doing it, there's no point, right? Like, why am I giving that exercise? I see that all the time in gyms. Squats, same idea, right? Like, are they able to like even perform a squat whatsoever, unloaded, or do I just need to keep them, loaded, or do I need to completely unload them because this is more damaging than it is helpful? Even if they don't have pain doing it, but it's just like watching it as a car crash, like, and you've done everything you can, but it's just a mobility issue. Okay, I'm gonna break this down. I'm gonna give you mobility drills for your ankles, knees, and hips, and let's just do some unloaded squats till we feel like this, more accessible. But in the beginning, I think that's really hard as a new coach to see those things. Obviously, if someone can't load their wrist, I'm not gonna force it on them because that could end up an injury. I'm gonna give them dumbbells or I'm gonna elevate them somewhere higher. This is another thing that's hard to do sometimes. Like, how do you think you can help differentiate, or how you can help that client learn what's the difference between pain, mobility, lack of mobility? Like, I was just talking about Sarah with her wrist. Like, how can I help build that person's confidence working through range of motion discomfort versus like, hey, I'm in actual pain. So I use like numbers a lot with people. Like, hey, I need you to start figuring out like your discomfort numbers and your pain numbers. Like, if this is above a level 3 pain and that's all you're thinking about during the exercise, I don't want to do it anymore, right? If it's below a level 3 and you're just kind of like, you're still able to think about what I'm asking of you and engage the muscle, then I'm good with you doing it. That's also up to them too, right? Like, if they don't want to do it at all because they're in pain, then you're not doing it at all. We have a really good book in the office called Supple Leopard. It's all about mobility versus flexibility. So, you want an easy nighttime read. No, it's not, but it's a very interesting book. It's a very interesting book, and it really helps with coaching. We went over core, right? Any questions? So conditioning, machines and conditioning. What I might do is we can summarize it real quick, but what we probably want to do is wait till we go through the warm-up on 5. But outside of strength, mobility, flexibility, balance, power, speed, which we don't focus on power or speed we focus on power, speed, mobility, flexibility, and strength the most, right? What we don't focus so much on is hold on a second, I'm not understanding this. Let me read it again. I see. Just speed. We don't focus a lot on speed, which is accurate. We do not focus on speed. We focus on strength, mobility, flexibility, balance, power. With those things come muscular and cardiovascular endurance, right? So like the number one thing I see in clients is someone like comes in, they can barely get through like 2 rounds of 10 reps of stuff without just feeling beat to shit. And then if literally 2 weeks later, they're able to get through 3 rounds of 15 and they feel like they have more in them, right? That's cardiovascular and muscular endurance. That's also why we start rep ranges high, because we want people to get through, we want them building that endurance. If I have someone come in and like, all right, just do 5 reps. Of course, there's situations where that might happen if you're dealing with pain on someone or replacement, but like just a basic general client who is just deconditioned, like I'm gonna want them to work in a higher rep range in the beginning, so I'm building that muscular endurance so that they're able to do more over time. If I don't work on doing that, then they're always gonna be tired, right? That also comes with promoting walking outside of gym, you know, hey, you don't wanna walk, you have a stationary bike, hey, whatever it might be, but they need to, if they're always complaining month on month about feeling sick or just worn out when they're here, there's something going on outside that they're not doing, which is moving. Because I mean, and that's another thing I get a lot. It's like, hey, I've been coming here for a month and I haven't lost any weight. I'm like, I didn't tell you you're gonna lose weight. Like, I don't know where you got that idea that exercise creates weight loss. Like, and you don't have to go into nutrition, that's not your job, but it's at least good to have like basic skills of, you know, and that's something I'm very upfront about. Like, exercise does not create weight loss. Your shitty diet will create weight loss. Like, will not create weight loss, right? So I always promote like, hey, try to think about like getting a green with every single meal and try to get at least 30 grams of protein with every meal and see how you feel with that. I guarantee you'll lose weight doing something like that. But people don't want to change their diets at all and they want to work out and they think that that's going to fix all their problems. And it's like, I saw a great quote the other day. It's like, no, but there was a great quote about like, people always think that like exercise creates weight loss. We're like, how many times a week do people work out maximum? Let's say 6, like maximum, right? Okay, 6. How many times a week do you eat? Right? So many more. So like the implementation of healthy eating is so much more effective than exercise. Like, you don't ever have to exercise. You can lose weight without exercise. Like, it's just all about your nutrition. But that, when I read that, I was like, that's a really great way of trying to get a client to understand, like, hey, this is something you eat 3 to 6 times a day, depending on how you eat. Like, those choices are way more impactful. Yeah, way more impactful than your 3 to 6 days of work exercise, right? Totally off subject, apologize.
No, that's good though.
So cardiovascular is aerobic, right? Cardiovascular endurance is a measure of how well you can perform large muscle dynamic exercises at moderate to high intensity for an extended period of time. Anaerobic is what?
Low intensity.
The opposite. Let's see. Let me think about what else I want to go over. Actually, this is a really good quote. I'll read this to you. Cardiovascular aerobic endurance is a measure of how well you can perform large muscle dynamic exercises at moderate to high intensity for an extended period of time. It is a measure of your body's ability to remove carbon dioxide and pump oxygen-rich blood into your organs. This makes cardiovascular endurance a direct indicator of heart function, lung capacity, and muscle function, right? If you have high cardiovascular endurance, you'll be able to perform intense exercise and workouts longer than someone who has low cardiovascular endurance, right? When you inhale, your body draws in oxygen from the outside world, filling your lungs. Some of that oxygen continues to allow you to breathe, but some of those oxygen atoms transfer into your bloodstream, and that's what produces oxygen-rich blood, then travels to the heart, which pumps out to your muscles, cells, and organs. When you engage in strenuous physical activity, your muscles need more oxygen than when you're resting. This means your cardiovascular system works harder than normal to move oxygen blood to your working muscles. That's kind of an easy way to explain that is like, hey, when you walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes, your body's working during that session, but the second you get off that treadmill, your body's back at rest. Your body doesn't have to do anything to recover from that session. For strength training, you're doing a lot more damage to that body over time, so your now recovery time is a lot longer, and that need for that rich oxygen blood is a lot higher, going into VO2 max right there. Let's see, aerobic exercise is different from anaerobic exercise, which involves short bursts of energy, includes activities like weight training programs. So anyone, like I almost primarily strength train. Like, I do power drills, I'll do some conditioning, but like my most steady state, right, which is zone 1 or 2, is walking my dog. Like 40 minutes an hour, that's my steady state, just creating that constant metabolic work versus like my anaerobics, my strength training, where I'm like 5 to 8 reps where I'm killing it and then my heart rate's jacked up and I'm recovering, right? So here, the most we do on stuff like that is these machines, right? I am going somewhere with this, I promise. And that's like the 1 to 2 minute sprints that we do with people. It's very important to understand how that bicycle feels. That bicycle, that name, that assault, it's named correctly. It assaults people on a daily basis. Like, people don't know what they're getting themselves into, so I'm very strict on people when they've never done the bike. Even the first 10 times they do the bike, hey, do not do 80%, do 50% of your effort because you will get sick. That bike has made more people sick than anything else in the gym because people don't understand what it's going to do to them, and they try to push all their effort, and then they feel their legs are shaking and they feel sick to their stomachs. So it's really important when you're coaching the bike to know, like, hey, don't go full out. Like, if you're used to doing the rower, you can't put as much energy into the bike as you're putting into the rower. You will destroy yourselves. So I think it's important in the next few weeks when you're like taking classes or in between coaching, like just jump on and see how things feel. We're gonna go over it, but we'll go over it at 6, so we have a second to go over this.
Is it different than an air dye?
No, same. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for the majority of people we're dealing with, steady state cardio is the most, zone 1 and 2 are the most important things you're gonna have people working in. If I can get someone twice a week in a zone 3 or 4 or 5 even, like, that's the most I need. But for what our clients are looking for, like quality of life, being able to walk up and down stairs, go for a hike, like, they more need that long steady state stuff, which we're not gonna give them here. We're gonna always produce that anaerobic here. They need to produce the aerobic on their own. Benefits of improving muscular endurance. This is a pretty great list. Muscular endurance, right? Strength training improves athletic performance, improves aerobic endurance, makes performing daily tasks easier, prevents injury, heart health, posture, general stability in your body, right? Helps weight loss, body weight maintenance. That's a huge thing, like for me. I think I've weighed the same for like 15 years. Like, I change my strength regime, but I don't ever not strength train. And I weigh the same constantly. And I change my diet, it doesn't seem to matter. Improves your body composition, right? I always try to get, that's another thing with talking about nutrition with people, I always try to get people to focus on like, hey, are your clothes feeling better? Like, you know, if you're like, I'm not making any progress. Like, well, like, you look like, to me, like Kenny, one of our clients, he's a 6 a.m.er. To me, he looks way broader and way narrower here. And he's like, I think I weigh more. And I'm like, yeah, because I think you change your body composition. Your body composition can change and your scale might go up or your scale might stay the same. But that doesn't mean you don't have more lean body mass than you did, you know, than you do now. So, improves your confidence and self-image, improves mood and sleep quality, and prevents health-related conditions. So I think it's really good to just have like small little bits like that, and they don't have to be these things, just like in your wheelhouse when you're talking to people about stuff like that. Muscular endurance training should not be confused with strength training. While a key benefit of muscular endurance training is strength, training the right way for muscular endurance ensures you'll gain strength while keeping your muscle lean and maintaining good range of motion, which is important while training for specific endurance-based sports. So for me, that's actually been really important lately. Like, I for years struggled with a lot of low back pain because I have a lot of injuries back there. But what I've noticed a big difference is when I increase my like steady state or like stair climber or doing small little jogs on the machines, I feel way better strength training because I've increased the range of motion of my joints and kind of like gotten myself really warm. So you might end up figuring clients out like that. Like, hey, I've realized this client does better when they're really warm. So I'm gonna make sure their warm-ups are really progressed and they're almost sweating before they start training because they'll feel better when they're training. We use a lot of body weight training because body weight training will also jack people's heart rate up. 1 to 2 minutes at a time. As they progress, their max effort of any of the machines would be 8 minutes. That's the semi-4, right? But